All right, so today we're diving into this YouTube video about Warren Buffett.
Okay.
And it really kind of paints a different picture of him than that whole, Oracle of Omaha
Yeah.
image, like the whole generous philanthropist kind of thing.
Yeah.
This one really makes you wonder, is he just a really savvy investor or is there something more to it?
Yeah, it's interesting how this video just like immediately goes into the insurance industry.
Yeah.
And it makes this claim that insurance is like Buffett's true cash cow.
Okay.
And you know what? There's actually a lot of truth to that.
It did feel like they were suggesting some secret scheme,
Yeah.
but it definitely got me curious.
Well, it's not exactly a scheme, but it is a really smart strategy that I feel like a lot of people don't think about.
Okay.
So think about it. When you pay your insurance premiums every month, you're kind of hoping you never see that money again, right?
Right, because that would mean something bad happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now imagine all of those premiums pooled together.
Okay.
It creates this massive amount of money that insurance companies can then invest for years, sometimes decades.
Wow.
This is what Buffett calls the float.
Okay.
It's essentially money that they have and they get to use before they ever have to pay out any claims.
So it's almost like they have free money to invest with,
Pretty much.
which is a huge advantage.
Yeah. Buffett's been really good at using this float from all of his insurance businesses to fuel all these other investments.
Huh.
He understands that it's different than a normal bank where people are constantly depositing and withdrawing money.
Right.
This insurance float gives him this stability and longevity that's super valuable for long-term investing.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's where that line from the video comes to mind.
Which one?
You know where they say, when you buy insurance, you hope you never want that money back.
Oh, yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah, that really sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
You're not putting your money into insurance expecting to get a return, like a savings account.
Right.
You're really just buying peace of mind and financial protection.
Exactly.
And that difference is what lets Buffett invest that money so aggressively.
Because he doesn't have to worry about people suddenly wanting to withdraw their money.
Exactly. He can just kind of ride out all the ups and downs of the market
Yeah.
and go after those long-term gains without the pressure of having to return money right away.
It's a smart strategy.
Yeah, it is.
But it takes a lot of confidence.
It really does. A deep understanding of risk and a really long-term perspective that most investors just don't have.
And then the video goes into talking about Buffett's reputation.
Okay.
And they're arguing that, his reputation is one of his most valuable assets.
Interesting.
They even went as far as to call it his, word of God status.
Wow.
Which I thought was a little much.
It's a little dramatic.
But they do make a good point about social proof, especially with money.
Definitely.
People tend to follow people they think are successful.
That's true.
And Buffett has really worked to create this image of being a really smart and successful investor. And that influences how people see his investment decisions.
So it's like a cycle. People trust him, so they follow his lead, which makes him more successful and just kind of reinforces that whole image.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
They use the example of Goldman Sachs during the 2008 financial crisis. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. How could I forget?
Exactly.
That was a wild time.
It really was.
Goldman Sachs was struggling, and then Buffett swoops in and makes this huge investment.
Right. And it wasn't just about the money at that point.
It was a huge vote of confidence when everyone was freaking out.
The markets were a mess, and then Buffett comes in almost like a knight in shining armor.
And everyone's oh, okay, maybe things aren't so bad after all.
Right. It's amazing how much influence perception can have on the financial world.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and then it makes you wonder how much of that was intentional on Buffett's part.
Right. Was he doing it for the good of the market, or was he playing 4D chess?
Exactly.
It's hard to say for sure.
Right.
But it definitely makes you think.
It does, and that's not even the end of it. The video then goes on to this whole thing about Buffett and taxes.
Oh, yeah. The claim that he doesn't pay his fair share.
Yeah.
Which we've all heard.
Right, and this is where we need to be careful and separate facts from, hyperbole.
Right, because it's easy to get caught up in the rhetoric.
Exactly.
But there is some truth to what they're saying about how capital gains taxes work.
Right. It's not as straightforward as just looking at someone's income.
Exactly.
Imagine you buy a house,
Okay.
let's say for $100,000. And then let's say a few years down the line, it's worth $200,000.
Okay.
You've made a profit of $100,000, but you only pay taxes on that profit when you sell the house.
So you could theoretically just not sell the house and not pay taxes on that gain.
Exactly. And the longer you hold on to something that's going up in value, the longer you can delay paying taxes on it.
Which makes sense, but it does seem like kind of a loophole.
It's definitely something that people have strong opinions about.
Especially when you hear stories about people like Buffett's secretary potentially paying a higher tax rate than him.
Right. It highlights how the current system can benefit people who have a lot of wealth tied up in investments
Exactly.
rather than a traditional salary.
It's definitely a complex issue with valid arguments on both sides.
Absolutely.
But the video doesn't stop there.
What else does it say?
They go on to claim that Buffett borrows against his Berkshire Hathaway stock. Yeah, and they make it sound like he never actually repays these loans.
Okay, so to be clear, borrowing against your assets is a pretty normal thing to do,
Sure.
especially for someone with as much money as Warren Buffett.
That makes sense.
He could easily get loans with really good interest rates just by using his stock as collateral.
It still makes you wonder, though, with all his resources, why even bother borrowing in the first place?
That's a great question.
Right.
And it really speaks to the whole idea of how wealth and influence work at that level.
It's like a whole different set of rules,
Kind of.
where the usual limitations don't really apply.
Exactly.
And the video seems to be suggesting that there's this certain amount of power and influence
Right.
that comes with having that much wealth.
It's an interesting point for sure.
And that it might give you access to opportunities
Yeah. Okay.
that most people could only dream of.
Right. Opportunities that might not even be available to someone who just plays by the rules.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
It is. It's like peeking behind the curtain.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder what else is going on that we don't know about.
Right. Like how much of what we see is the whole story.
And how much of it is just carefully crafted PR.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's like that old saying, the more you know, the less you realize, you know.
It's so true.
This video, even with all of its like strong opinions
Yeah.
and kind of dramatic moments,
Yeah.
it does make you stop and think.
It does. It really does.
Like it makes you question, like, what's really going on here?
Exactly. And are we only getting like a small part of the story?
Right.
Like with that whole Goldman Sachs deal, for example?
Oh, yeah. That was interesting how they were practically like begging him to take their money.
Yeah, it was like they were offering him their firstborn or something.
It's a bit dramatic.
Just a little.
But it does make you think about the power dynamics at play.
Absolutely.
Goldman Sachs was desperate. They needed help. And Buffett was in a position to give it to them.
Right. But on his terms.
Exactly. He had all the leverage.
And it goes back to that whole word of God thing we were talking
Oh,
about.
totally.
His involvement wasn't just about the money.
Right.
It was about sending a message.
Right. Like a vote of confidence.
Exactly.
Imagine being an investor back then.
Oh, gosh. I would have been freaking out.
Right. The markets are crashing.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's going to happen. And then you see Warren Buffett put his money into Goldman Sachs.
And you're like, okay, maybe everything is going to be all right.
Exactly. It's like a stamp of approval from the ultimate financial guru.
It's kind of crazy how much influence one person can have.
It is. And it makes you realize that there's so much more to investing than just picking stocks.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like sociology even.
Totally. You have to understand how people are going to react to things.
Exactly. Successful investing, especially on Buffett's scale,
Yeah.
it's not just about numbers. It's about understanding human behavior.
And how easily we are influenced by people we perceive as being successful. So it's like this whole other level of strategy.
Right. It's like they say, invest in people, not in stocks.
Exactly. So what you're saying is I should have invested in Warren Buffett when I had the chance.
Well, hindsight is always 20/20.
That's true. That's true.
But it's never too late to learn from the best.
That is true.
Even if we can't replicate everything Buffett does.
Right.
There are definitely some key takeaways from his approach.
Right. Like what?
Well, for starters, thinking long term.
Okay.
Buffett didn't get rich quick. He built his wealth over decades.
That's true. Patience is key.
Exactly. It's about having a plan and sticking to it even when things get a little rocky.
Which is easier said than done, let's be real.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's what separates the good investors from the great ones.
So true.
And it's not just about patience. It's also about constantly learning.
Okay.
Buffett reads constantly.
He does. He's always got his nose in a book.
Exactly. He's always looking for an edge, trying to understand businesses and markets better than anyone else.
And it seems like he never stops learning,
Nah,
even at his age.
that's what I find so inspiring about him.
Me too.
He never rests on his laurels. He's always striving to improve.
That's a good lesson for all of us,
It really is.
no matter what field you're in.
Exactly. Always be learning.
And then there's the question of ethics.
Right, because the video did bring up some concerns about that.
It did. And while they didn't necessarily provide any concrete evidence of wrongdoing,
Right.
it does make you think about the choices that people make when they have that much wealth and power.
It's a slippery slope.
It can be, and it's up to each of us to decide what we're willing to do for financial success.
And whether or not it's worth sacrificing your values.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really makes you think, like we started out talking about Warren Buffett, this like investing legend.
Right.
And now we're questioning like the whole system.
And what it even really takes to succeed in finance.
Yeah, this video definitely pushed us to think outside the box.
It did. It felt like watching one of those like documentaries that leaves you with more questions than answers.
Exactly.
Did we get the whole story with Buffett? Probably not.
Probably not, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because it got us thinking, which is what matters.
Exactly. So even if we don't have billions of dollars, what can we actually take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of thinking long term.
Okay.
Buffett didn't make his money overnight. It took him decades of investing to build that kind of wealth.
Patience.
Yeah, exactly.
Something I definitely need to work on.
Well, it's not easy.
It's not. It's so hard to not get caught up in the hype.
I know, Indian.
Like when you see everyone else making money.
Right, and you just want to jump in.
Exactly.
But the best investors are the ones who can stay calm.
And stick to their plan.
Exactly.
So patience is key.
Absolutely. But it's also important to never stop learning.
Okay.
Buffett is constantly reading, researching, trying to learn as much as he can about businesses and markets.
That's true. He's always got his nose stuck in a book.
Exactly.
Oh.
And it's not just about reading. It's about being curious, asking questions, and always trying to improve your understanding.
It's like that growth mindset everyone's always talking about.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the ethics piece.
Right, because the video did kind of make it seem like maybe Buffett's not as squeaky clean as he seems.
Well, they made some accusations, but didn't really back them up with much evidence. But it does raise some interesting questions about the responsibility that comes with having that much wealth and influence.
It's a good reminder for all of us.
Absolutely.
To think about our values and what we're willing to do to achieve our goals.
Because at the end of the day, financial success isn't worth sacrificing your integrity.
Well said. So after this deep dive into the world of Warren Buffett, I think we've learned a lot.
We definitely have.
Not just about investing, but also about like life in general.
Sure.
Like how to think long term.
Right.
The importance of continuous learning.
Yes.
And staying true to your value.
Absolutely. It's about more than just making money. It's about living a life that you're proud of.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and happy investing.